Today is about the next generation.
It was October of 2011 when we were approached by a number of thought leaders in the sector that said, you know, Chuck, we have a new idea. It's about building the field of public interest communications. And almost with that one sentence I said, we're in.
I am a first-generation American. My parents are both Nigerian immigrants. I'm also a first-generation college student. Now I can say college graduate. I'm now a first-generation law student at the George Washington University in Washington, D.C., and I'm also a first-generation Frank Karel Fellow in Public Interest Communications.
With great power comes great responsibility. But in my life, in fact, I would learn the opposite. That with a lot of responsibility will come great power to drive me to do a lot for my community.
I can truly say that being a Frank Karel Fellow has exposed me to so many good things in such a short period of time. Because of the fellowship, I'm now pursuing a completely different trajectory. It was so powerful that honestly it changed a 20-year life path for me.
We have the resources. We are communicators. We have the effective tools. And Frank, one of the things he said is, it's not just about throwing your money out there. It's not just about throwing your name out there. But how can you be a direct impact of the change? How can you be a hands-on impact of the change?
I graduated high school, top 5% of my class. I graduated with a 4.4 GPA, got accepted into colleges, got scholarship opportunities, but I had to turn all of that down because of my immigration status. And I faced my own deportation. And while my friends were spending the summer thinking about what are we going to do at the beach, I was thinking about what am I going to do with my future. I mean, I've never been to India. I've been in the US since I was a year old. I can't go back, you know? But luckily for me, I had great help. My friends, my family, my community. But most importantly, I think, was the media. And I'm here today because the media saved my life. So 3 days before I found out I was going to be deported, the US government granted me a reprieve to be able to remain in the United States and continue with my education. And this was made possible because the media took this stereotype of the undocumented illegal immigrant, which most of us think is like this sweaty Mexican guy who crosses the border, huge mustache, is smuggling drugs and like people with him, right? That's what we think. But the media took that stereotype and shattered it and showed that here, you have an American kid who's born and raised basically in America, who wants to give back to his own community here in Maryland and in the States. And that's why I'm here.
So I was sitting in my room, I was just studying for the LSAT. I was about 3/4 of the way through the book. And it really just dawned on me that being a corporate lawyer, that path was just not for me anymore. So I literally stood up, grabbed my book, walked to the trash chute and dumped it. And that was that. I always thought I was going to be a corporate lawyer, like I said, from second grade. And this experience has really shown me there's so many other options. And it put me on a path that I honestly think will be a lot more rewarding for me in the future. So once again, I'd just love to give a great thank you to everyone who's made this possible. And I really appreciate everyone for being here.
And as we know, in the public interest field, a lot of times we're not working with a lot of money. So the village did not have enough money to fight this litigation. It reminded me that when I go to law school, I need to remember things like this. I need to remember that there's a lot of misinformation out there. The village, they were right, but because of, you know, they didn't have the proper resources, they didn't have someone who wanted to fight on their behalf, they gave up. They didn't even try to fight. And so this report, really where the communications aspect comes into play, originally I had to read this like 50-page report. It was pretty dense, it had all these legal terms, and my assignment was to get it down into 4 pages so that other advocates who don't have a legal background could easily digest this information and use it for their advocacy work. And that's where communications and the legal field comes in. There needs to be someone who is willing to explain these terms to people so that they can understand it and use it.
This summer really helped me realize that my skills in multimedia could help me pursue a lot of different things. And then also I learned a lot of stuff like being flexible and attention to details, as well as the ability to see many different perspectives.
Adopting the advice of these wonderful communications mentors, I can truthfully say that I am making a conscious effort to think non-linearly, to make the uninteresting or unrelatable newly relevant and provoking. And I look forward to developing these distinct aspects and the comprehensive, holistic skill for the rest of my life. I feel so fortunate and grateful to have been granted this experience, and I'm still astounded that I was chosen to be in the inaugural class of Frank Karel Public Interest Communications Fellow.
So I am from the inner city of Atlanta. My neighborhood, the biggest hope for a person like me is to survive the ills of our neighborhood. My family, they can't believe the stuff I'm doing now because the whole thing is like, oh, you gonna make it. You gonna be a postal worker. You gonna be a truck driver. Have a good government job as a postal worker. That's like the big dream. I've always had this idea that I was going to be in communications. I didn't major in communications, I majored in political science, but I know that this is the work that I'm going to do. And the first person that introduced me to that when I was little, sitting in my grandma's house, Oprah Winfrey. The idea that using communications and using a platform like television to change lives, to save lives, and to change policy. And what I think Frank would want us to do today is not just talk about this field, but how can all of us, with all of the resources we have, with all the connections we have, with all the outreach we can do, how can we change something? How can we make it so we won't kill our kids in the adult system? How can we make it so kids who have been in this country all their life, regardless of where their parents came from, can get an education? How can we make it so tobacco companies won't be killing our kids and trying to make them smoke cigarettes? How can we, Andy works in healthcare, how can we make it so everybody can have access to proper healthcare?